Hello, and welcome to That's Just Human. It's a podcast that explores all aspects of being human, living in a human body, and dealing with life's obstacles. We discuss different people's stories, learn practical tools for growth and healing that help you to learn to step into your authentic self and aliveness. I'm Elisha LightAngel, and by day, I'm a massage therapist, and then I do many other things. And just like you, I have lived in a body and had the pleasure of experiencing life as a human. So many different stories that get to come alive. Today, I'm really excited to introduce the guest, and it is one of my bestest of best friends, a soul sister from another mister. She is an artist, a photographer, graphic designer, a homesteader, a wife, a mom. She wears probably at least 100 different hats. And she's one of the most amazing beings that I know. So please join me in welcoming Zoey Sunshine Coley. Welcome.
Hi. Hello.
All right, so you do wear a bajillion hats at this point in life. And today we're going to delve into a topic that I think is close to a lot of women's hearts and bodies. And as a massage therapist, I get to see a lot of bodies and hear stories from people on just different things that are happening or ways that they're experiencing life through their bodies. And my friend Zoey here has had 7 children total from 2 different marriages, and she has portaled out so many amazing little human beings. And so we're going to get into some of what it's like if you have never had a child yet and you kind of want to know some of the things to expect, or maybe you're never going to have a child and you just want to know what somebody else's experience is like, or you also have 7 or more children and it's just a really nice thing to go into. So Zoe, give us a little bit of background. Did you always want to have several children?
Yes, so I think when I was about 13 years old, I decided that I wanted to have 10 kids. And my cousins used to make fun of me when I was growing up. They said, "Oh, did you ever get to have those 10 kids?" When I would come visit more recent years, I've seen some of them, and they don't keep up with my family because we live in like about 6 hours away from each other. So they don't really have the update on they always ask me, "How many kids do you have now?" And remember when you wanted to have 10? And I was like, "Well, I had 7." So they're like, "Wow." So yeah, I've always wanted to have a large family. At one point, I thought I wanted to have 12 kids actually, because I found out that they could all get free scholarships for college. So I was like, I could put out 2 more babies and then they would all get a free ride to college.
If you have 12 kids, they get a free ride to college. How does that work?
Some kind of program that was in place. It was back in the 90s, honestly. So I don't even know if that still exists, but I have one of my best friends. She has 8 children. One of them is adopted, and we were associated with other large families within our church organization and stuff like that. So, I got to know other large families that had 7 or 8 kids, sometimes 10 kids, and I was like, "Oh, I want to have 10 kids too." And found out throughout different families, if you have 12, they get free college because it's some kind of family initiative to build families, and less people want larger families. It's a strain financially, so I get it. But everybody's built differently, and I always wanted to bring a lot of really amazing creative people into the world, and I got to do that.
That is incredible. I applaud and admire the fact that you have so many kids and keep all the balls in the court somehow bouncing around. I've only had 1 kid, and then I wasn't even a full-time mom for his whole life. So having that amount of responsibility to me feels overwhelming. How do you manage that many kids?
Well, I have 2 sets of children, as you know. My first 3, I was a single mom for a lot of that time. And so I had to figure out my whole life, and went from being a housewife to not knowing what was happening in my life and having to figure out my career suddenly and how to support my family and be mom and dad. And their dad wasn't very present, so I had to do that entire run by myself until they were a little older. And then I met David and we did it all together at that point and then made four more children. So it's been a very delicate balancing act every single day because my life is very busy. All times I'm in my office and kids are, mom, I need this, mom, I need that, I'm hungry, he hit me, typical kid things. And they're also homeschooled. So that honestly, the transition to homeschooling, we do K-12 at home program. So it's still public school, but it's online. And a few of my kids were going through bullying and we had to pull them out of the system because of the intensity of the bullying, which has been very shocking to me that it's starting at such a young age now. So we've had to take more control over our family and how we raise our kids and how they're treated by their peers. And now their peers are just their siblings and they play all day long together. They're very happy. They kind of self-manage. I've taught them how to schedule themselves. I'm teaching them still how to schedule themselves. That's kind of a ever evolving process of everybody needs to know how to emotionally regulate and physically regulate and make sure they have enough time to eat, sleep, and rest and have fun. So we have more control over that now that we switched to them being at home, and they're a lot happier, honestly, than they were in public school. And Maya, I thought, was going to be the star of her group, and she was just going to be popular and have so many friends. And then I was just shocked how mean these little girls have been in pre-K and in kindergarten. It's just shocking how bad it's gotten since I was in school. And I'm 43 now, so I was bullied as well. And I knew I didn't have any way out back then. And I'm grateful that we have that as an option now for kids that are being bullied. And I've noticed a lot of the kids that go to K-12 are kids that were bullied, or they're different, or they're learning different. And so now they're in a better environment where they're getting to interact with people this way, and they make better friends online for some reason, just because of the way they learned or something in their etymology of me and their dad being artsy and creative and more engineer minded. They're very technologically advanced. Cami knows her alphabet all by herself. She can read. She taught herself how to read at 4 years old. She's recognizes the letters. I just discovered this 2 days ago. I did not teach her any of this. Her siblings aren't teaching her any of this. So I found the more kids that you have, the more advanced they become with each one. I always thought, like when Sebastian was born, my first, he's 23 now. When he was a baby, I would work with them and try to make them multilingual from the beginning. I would teach them Spanish and French and teach them the basics as a baby because I wanted them to be smarter. I wanted them to have more advantages and more knowledge than the average child so that they could go further, hopefully, than I did in life. Trying to equip the next generation.
I love that. And I can totally vouch for how amazing your children are, not just in being able to listen and in a respectful way, not because they're afraid of you or your husband as parents, which is how I was raised. It was you're good out of fear. Like your children are just respectful and then also very loving. The people that you bring into their home, they just outpour so much love and joy. And I don't know that I've met somebody else's kids that are as joyful and vibrant as yours are. So you're doing something right.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I've been discovering the reflection of, especially this past week, how different my parenting has been from the beginning intentionally and how it turned out at this point. Now that I have 3 adult children that are on their own. It's Samantha's birthday today. She's 22 today. So, just the things that she thinks about and talks about, and the things Sebastian talks about, and Corinne, and the way they pray and the way they process, and they're just very different and more emotionally responsible and quicker at healing, which was my intention from the beginning, was to make it easier for the next generation or somebody else to go through their processes faster so they don't have to learn as hard of lessons as I learned through life, and just passing on that wisdom. I'm very tribal about the way I do things, and I wanted to raise a village of amazing people, not just my kids, but my friends' children as they come in and out. We are actually seeing Olivia and Kenneth this weekend as well, and they might spend the night on Saturday. And the kids miss each other. The little kids, Salem and Cami, he's I think a little bit younger than her, and she's turning 5. He was like, I want to go to Uncle David's house. I was just like, oh, he said, it's been too long. That's coming out of a child's mouth, like a young child's mouth. And Cami too, or on the same day, they both said, I want to see Salem. She said, I miss them. And so they called for each other, and we're so connected. And I was talking to Olivia for like an hour earlier, and I was talking about how if I have like some breakdown, all of a sudden everybody all at once contacts me. Are you okay? We are very connected, and they can tell when somebody's hurting within our group. And I really love that we all have this support system that we've built around ourselves to have this really amazing community. And right now it's kind of small for our little clan, but we have the bigger collective as well that we interact with and impact. And I'm hoping to impact our area as well with some really awesome like family programs on our land. And there's a lot coming up for our whole family right now, and we're all in training. So it's really cool process to see unfold, like my children picking up traits that I had they witnessed in me. I never said, you need to be this or you need to do that. I always let them kind of self-guide and just made sure they didn't fall off the edge, trying to learn how to balance delicately on that line of whatever it is that they're called to be in their life, and just trying to cultivate whatever giftings I see along the way.
That's so beautiful. How do you self-regulate in between? You've got your children doing it, so how do you do this?
It is very difficult because I'm in charge of a lot of people and a lot of things all at once, and not just my own family, but also my community. So I every day make sure I practice self-care. I recently started wearing makeup again every day, pretty much every day. I'm really, I mean, anybody that knows knows that I don't really wear makeup. I don't pretty myself up every day. I don't see that as normally something that I have time to do or make time to do. And so I'm having to make time for myself, for my self-care routines. And that's become more prominent lately, where I put on music, I put a speaker in the bathroom, and I close both doors, and I'm in my portal, and I'm in there making myself feel ready for the day and to encounter everything I have to do throughout the day. We run a farm. We have a lot going on, a lot of moving pieces, and all of our businesses. So I have to really take that at least 30 minutes bubble of time. I don't like to spend a lot of time on myself just because I have so much going on. I would love to spend 2 hours in the bathroom, but I just am not that kind of person. I don't have that kind of time. So I give myself a allotted time in the morning to prepare myself, and an allotted time at night to wind down without kids, without David, even just where I'm reading scriptures in bed. And that's my nighttime rundown, is just tapping out from technology and from the go of life, and trying to just maintain my own sense of centeredness and groundedness because of everything that I have on my plate and my future goals.
That's so beautiful. And I'm glad that you have gotten to the point where you're prioritizing yourself and giving yourself time in the morning and at night. So it's not always doing for everyone else.
Yeah.
I would love to know what has changed in some of your parenting techniques from the first child to the 7th child, because I've heard the first child, that's our learning, do everything wrong with the child, and then you get better. So how has that transformed in your life?
Yeah, I can definitely, I think I'm going to actually work on a book about this, about several aspects. One book just for this topic of from child to child, the differences, and from one child to the next, it's totally different. You deal with entirely different themes of issues or desires within each of them. They're individual people. So I always try to look at it from the beginning as this is an individual that is going to become an adult someday. And I'm responsible for them until they get to a certain point, and then they go off on their own and discover the rest of their life and all of their giftings and their purpose for their life. With Sebastian, my first child, I was terrified. I was 19 years old. I was a newlywed. I got pregnant on my wedding night. I thought it would take us like 2 years to have a baby or something, because that was kind of the general time frame I was seeing in other couples. But I feel like having the trajectory of wanting 10 kids back then and only having 7, but only having that trajectory, I had to, from the beginning, kind of set a plan for myself. And I started kind of planning when I was 15 and praying over the next generations to come. But when I would hold Sebastian, my first child, the way he would look at me as a baby, trying to learn me, trying to understand me. At first, I had a hard time making eye contact with my first child. Just, it felt so intimate, so delicate, so scary, honestly, to mess it up, to not be able to provide everything they were going to need into adulthood. And like, how am I going to pay for college? How am I going to get their first cars? Or, all of those things kind of just sort out along the way, because you're constantly transforming through every age and every stage that you go through as a mom and as an individual, even as a dad, obviously, and the child individually as well. We're all growing together. And so the first one was scary at first, and then he just was so easy. He slept all the time for the first 3 months. I was like, babies are boring. They don't do anything. I'm like, or something. And I would just lay him in the rocker and work on other stuff, and he just would sleep. And then about 3 months in, he started teething. That was my first terrifying, what's wrong with your baby kind of situation. Oh my gosh. I just remember this story. I don't know if I ever told you this. But I had some roommates. My first husband and I had some roommates, and we went to McDonald's this day, and I had a newborn, and he was 3 months old at that point, and he started breaking his first couple of teeth that were really making his tummy upset. So he was just crying and crying all the time. All of a sudden, it just came out of nowhere. We're inside McDonald's, and he just screams his head off the whole time. And this little boy, I'm like, okay, maybe he needs to nurse, maybe, because I was breastfeeding. I breastfed all of my children. So I rushed to the bathroom so I could go privately nurse, because I'm new at this. I'm a new mom. I don't know how to breastfeed in public yet or anything like that, where I can properly cover myself so people aren't either A, looking, or B, embarrassed that I'm breastfeeding near them while they're eating their food. So I ran to the bathroom with him, and this little boy followed me into the bathroom, and the whole way through he's like, what's wrong with the baby? What's wrong with the baby? And I was like, I don't know, please stop following me. And I go and I close the door, and he comes up underneath the stall, and I'm like, oh, he's Sebastian inside a stall, and he's like, what's wrong with your baby? I'm like, oh my God, go away. And so I run out of there, and I'm like, okay, we gotta go. And I'm like with my roommates, and I was like, we gotta go. I don't know what's going on. He doesn't need a diaper change. I checked everything. And as we're running out to the parking lot, and I'm trying to put him in, the little boy's right up against the car, no parents in sight. And he runs right up to me, what's wrong with the baby? And I'm like, ah, please leave me alone. Where are your parents? That was one of my first terrifying have a new baby experiences from way back when.
Wow.
I guess when I got pregnant with my second child, I was excited to have another baby, and then I was excited to have a girl. So I had now a boy and a girl. And oh man, when she was born, I would pet her, and then I would realize that I was petting her like a kitten or something. And I just like, oh my God, I'm literally petting my baby. She has this thing now. Since all growing up where she has to have somebody rubbing her arm or like petting her in some way, rubbing her leg when she's at the dentist, and boyfriends, her sister, she's like, pet me. She literally put her arm out and be like, pet me. I need pets. And I was like, oh my gosh, she got that from me doing that to her as a baby. That's so weird and funny. So I was like, oh, you got that from me. I'm sorry, baby.
That's actually pretty fascinating how something at this point it's very unconscious. She doesn't remember you petting her, and yet it's carried with her into adulthood that sensory touch is something that she is craving
Yeah.
from other people. What a great pinpointed example of the ways that our childhood can really form our adult years and how we experience life.
Yeah. Corinne, by my third baby. So the first two I had a year apart, like they call them Irish twins when they're a year apart. And then Samantha and Corinne are 2 years apart. And I was living with my mom at the time with my ex-husband. And I was like, oh no, we're not ready for another baby. So that was my like, uh-oh moment I didn't plan that. And we weren't in the right circumstances. So I gave her the middle name of Selah, which means to pause and reflect. And it's a biblical term that I just always had in my mind. And then I was like, oh, this is where it applies. It applies right now that I need to stop and kind of evaluate my life and see what I'm doing with myself, with my marriage, with my life, where we're going, we're living in my mom's house. We need to get out of here and get our own house and build our own kingdom. That whole leaving and cleaving process didn't properly happen. We were going through marital struggles, so then we ended our marriage at some point, and that made my parenting even more different at that point, because now I was having to parent from a protective mindset of not just allowing any man into my life during the dating period of my life at that point, and making sure I could provide stability for them and also still nurture them and teach them everything that as a mom I would teach them on. If I was partnered, especially, it looks very different than when you're trying to do it on your own. And especially if you're getting help from family, there's added stresses and pressures that come with that. So I had a 10-year age gap between the first set of children of 3 and the second set of 4. By the time I got pregnant with Toby at that 10-year separation mark, I was excited to start over again, but also kind of disappointed that I had such a large gap between the two sets, because my trajectory in my mind was 10 kids and my time was starting to dwindle in what would be safe, healthy, and best for my body and for my children, and any potential complications that would come around now suddenly were coming into play because I was 31 or 32 at that point. Ooh, after 30, you have risk of complications of multiple. So then I was like, every baby after that, I thought, oh no, I'm having twins for sure. I'm having twins with this one. And so there was always that added stress and pressure during pregnancies until I had confirmation that I wasn't carrying twins. I was also traveling a lot at that point. I went to Central America while I was pregnant with Toby. And we traveled for 2.5 months during that pregnancy, which caused some complications because I did all the things that you're not supposed to do during pregnancy. So at this point, I thought, I'm pro at this. I'm a pro birther. I did it all naturally. I didn't need any help then. I'll be fine. I don't need anything. No, I could do this in the jungle if I wanted. And I ended up having a C-section with Toby after coming back to America from Costa Rica because he had flipped on me from the many boat rides that were very rough terrain across the water. We would have to drive. We would take a boat across the lake in Guatemala, and it would take 30 minutes to get from one side to the other side. And that's in like kind of almost like a rough speedboat full of people, and they go from on the water. And so my belly was also hitting the waves, every wave. I hiked, I I went on boats, I flew, I mountain climbed. There was definitely a mountain climbing circumstance in Guatemala where I had to literally scale the side of the mountain, 9 months pregnant. And I I don't have any regrets, and I have regrets about a lot of those decisions during that pregnancy because I could have put my child at risk of not being born. And I also thought I was going to die when I went back for my C-section. So my pregnancy suddenly took a whole other turn from my previous experiences. And it also shifted my reality entirely because prior to that, being a pro-birther in my mind, being a natural woman that thought I knew everything at that point about birthing and natural momming. I had some judgments about women that had had C-sections and took the easy way out as I used to think of it. But when I was in an emergency situation with my own pregnancy and child at risk, and his foot popped out in our best friend's apartment at that
I
time,
remember that. That was wild.
that was a really hard reflecting point as Toby's leg was literally dangling out. I remember the moment since you were there. I remember feeling, I was like, oh, is it an elbow? When I reached down to see what was starting to come through, I was like, oh God, please let that be an elbow. And then it was his foot that came out. And I was like, oh no, baby, you're upside down. And I remember looking at everybody going, do I try to push him out or do I go to the hospital?
If I remember correctly, we were still waiting on your midwife to arrive, that she hadn't quite gotten there yet. I think your doula was there, but the midwife was still en route.
5 doulas present. So I was like, we're good. And Laura was there. And I was like, we're all medicine people. We got this. We're good. And then that took a sudden turn. And I remember being wheeled out of there with a baby's leg hanging out of me to the hospital. And I had never been put under before, never had anesthesia before. And so when they came back to tell me, like, they started stripping off hair and stuff, like they were getting ready to like cut me open. And I was like, whoa, what's happening? Like, they're like, we got to get this baby out of you. And I was like, whoa, I'm having a C-section. Like, you can't just flip him. Like, I had been told by so many midwives that you could just flip the baby, but it's going to take a professional to do it. And I was like, well, they're not even going to try. They're just going to get him out. And that was a really difficult birth for me. The C-section was really difficult to heal from. And during that time, we were staying at Laura's at the time, and she let us take her bed for that time frame while it was healing. And I was really grateful for that. And I remember just being in so much pain, like I wasn't able to like use my stomach muscles properly because it cut through that lower part. And oh man, it took years for that to like fully work properly, where I could actually flex that area of my stomach or suck it in. I couldn't even suck any of that in because the muscles didn't contract properly. And I really do blame myself for a lot of that. And that was hard on my mental processing. And I was like, maybe I shouldn't do this again. But then we got pregnant pretty quickly with Charlie during the transition from us going from Laura's apartment to us becoming roommates in the apartment across from her. The pregnancy occurred during that transition somewhere. And I found out in our new apartment, oh, you're pregnant again. And I was like, whoa, I didn't plan that. But so again, I'm having Irish twins in a similar circumstance to my first marriage. And I was like, all right, we're going to be okay. And then I had pre-diabetes throughout that pregnancy. And gestational diabetes is like you constantly have to monitor everything you eat. And I was just really, really awful at that point with my eating habits and my self-care. And I mean, I was eating like 3 cupcakes a day. And I was addicted to sugar and
Bahama Bucks every day.
Bahama Bucks every day. Yeah. So,
I miss it. I'm not going back, but I remember the deliciousness of Bahama Bucks.
yeah. Yeah. I'm glad there's not one close by to us though, because the kids discovered the Bahama Bugs and like Raspas. There's one in McKinney, so it's a little further away, but we don't go out there very often because we stay on the farm most of the time, unless we really have to go into the city for something, like we just don't. So that saves us money. We have a lot of people to buy the snow cones for, so it's not really feasible for us to do that all the time, but we do it occasionally and they like it, but they also like sugars, and that's my fault because of me eating so much sugar during my pregnancies. So there's a lot of like I would like to make that transparent as a mom who struggled with my eating habits, my weight, my sugar addiction, all of those things that I had to break off. Red dye addiction. I had a red dye addiction really badly. I was drinking 5 Big Reds a day back then. Yeah. And I don't drink Big Red anymore. I don't drink sodas anymore or anything. I've had to do a lot of intermittent fasting, elimination diets, and clearing out stuff, toxins out of my body so that I can get healthy again, strengthen myself now that I'm no longer having children. I had my tubes removed after Cami was born, and that was baby number 7. I've also had a few miscarriages too throughout the process. So that's also been phases that I've had to go through, not knowing I was pregnant and then finding out, oh, you're pregnant, and I'm bleeding that very day as my midwife's announcing a little exciting surprise that was no longer with us, already processing out. And I was just like, oh, wow, okay. So, Dave and I don't know why that hit us so fast and so hard at that point. I think because we were struggling financially as a couple to like make our life work. I think that babies made that feel better. It made it feel like more exciting, like we had something to look forward to and something to like focus on. And then we both got hit hard with depression through that. And then we healed from that. And immediately after that miscarriage, got pregnant with Maya. So she was baby number 6. And I thought she was going to be my last. And I decided to try the breathe it out method with her because I had really heard from all the crunchy moms, doulas, all these people's videos on YouTube about letting your baby come naturally by breathing them out and a gentle birth. And I was like, okay, I'm going to try that with this baby. So it was kind of like I experimented with each one to find the best method for me that was least painful. And water birth was that for me for all of my children. It made it easier to do a water birth. The ones that I didn't do water births with were my harder pregnancies, my harder labors, because I was in a hospital in a colder environment, not a home environment, and just different setting, more stressful, more machines hooked up to you. And I had Samantha and Corinne both with hospital midwives. So my second and third child I had with hospital midwives. My first I had at home in a baby pool, just like a little swimming pool that my sister-in-law, midwife, and so by Toby's, we ended up in the hospital, and then Charlie, we had a home birth with Charlie. I kind of skipped over his birth, so I'll go back to his before Maya's. Charlie, we did in our apartment, and we had rented a big birthing pool for our bedroom. We had a space cleared out for it. We had a hose. And the hose link, the little gasket from the inside that keeps it from spraying out everywhere. Dave lost it somehow. And we went out dancing that night because I was so tired of being pregnant. I was 10 months pregnant. I was like, this baby, I went to 42 weeks with him. And I was like, he does not want to come out. He wants to stay in there. He's comfortable. I have to evict him. So we went out dancing and I was like, this baby's getting noticed tonight. You're out of here. So I had already tried walking with him and all these exhausting methods of trying to get my baby to come out, and it just wasn't working. And I was like, he loves me. He does not ever want to leave me. He's so cozy in there. I think also having in the reality scale of the not funny aspects, but having a C-section prior made it harder for me to have a natural birth the next time around. And so I was already starting to, I wondered if I could go without another C-section because I wasn't sure at that point. So I had to do a lot of research. I had to ask my midwife. I was like, I don't want another C-section. That was awful. If I can avoid that and do a natural home birth, I would love to transition back to home birthing because that has been my best and easiest births.
Is that a myth that doctors tell people that once you've had a C-section, then you have to have all of your babies in C-section?
Absolutely. Because after Toby, I had three more children, natural birth. All of them were natural birth. It did make my pregnancies harder. It did take longer because my muscles were still trying to learn how to contract properly by the time I was pregnant with Charlie and with Maya. So my stomach was still recovering, my stomach muscles, my all the whatever tissues and stuff that had been severed and then had to reform, and then the scar tissue and all that around it had to retrain my body how to birth naturally, which was difficult but not impossible, obviously, because I did it. But not everybody wants to invest that level of attention to themselves, or they don't have as high of a pain tolerance. I have a very high pain tolerance due to the previous life that I had. I've been through a lot, so the physical pain is able to be balanced for me. But I know that that's not the reality for everybody, and their birthing methods are going to be unique to each individual mom. And after my C-section with Toby, I lost every judgment. I remember a lot of mental processing at Laura's about my judgments of like, oh, they took the easy way out because they preferred to keep their body skinny or not have stretch marks, or women that had surrogates. Like I did have some negative viewpoints that I had to course correct in my mind after that. I wanted to write a whole book about the trauma of C-section because it was entirely traumatizing for me. They took my baby from me for hours while I was sleeping off the medication from the anesthesia. And he has attachment issues. He's scared of the dark. He's scared to be alone. He does not like when he can't find his siblings. It created this whole thing that I don't have with any of my other children. I don't. So as a mom that's had one C-section and 6 natural births, beyond that, I know the difference. I see the difference. He's one child, cannot be alone, does not like being alone. If he can't find one of the other siblings, he's frantically, Charlie, 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 Charlie. I'm like, Toby, calm down. He's right out there. We'll find him. It's okay. He's not gone. He's here somewhere. One time he climbed in the back of our van to go to work with David because he was so attached to every time David would leave the house, he would run crying to the street to go get in the van with him, and he would have to bring him back and comfort him, and I'd have to comfort him, say, no, you can't go with dad to work. It's not safe. You could get hurt. We had a situation one time with Toby where I called the cops because I couldn't find him. And I was shocked. I was like, he would never go into the forest at that age, especially on his own. We lived very near a forest at the other property. And I just thought, I kept calling for him and I was like, he's not here. I can feel that he's not here. And I was like, Dave, check the back of the van. I think he's with you. He must be in the van. He's like, I called for him. He didn't answer. He was so scared when David yelled out, Toby, are you in the van? He hid further and stayed quiet because he thought he was going to get in trouble. So David came all the way back home from the job site. He was almost 2. And the cops are there. The neighbors are helping. We formed a search party at this point.
Oh my God.
We're about to go into the forest thinking he's been eaten by wolves or something, and my child is missing, or he's been kidnapped, or something happened. And one of the police officers saw him pop up in the back of the van, and he was looking around, and he was like, babe, he's in the van. And I was like, I told you he was in the van. I could feel that he was with you. And it's just, he was so scared. He was so attached, and so he's the only one that does that. None of the other kids have done that. None of them. There's a big difference between that circumstance, and I'm sure that other children, there's probably similar patterns with attachment style based on them being separated from the mom during the time that she's recovering. And David stayed with like every time he could be with them. When they would take him back for a bath or do any of his checkups, David tried to stay with him as much as he could to make sure that nothing happened to his first child. That was his first baby experience. So I went through my own trauma, and then I went through trauma about my husband's trauma. So trauma everywhere for everybody. So we've been through a lot of healing processes. We've had to talk about it a lot and be very raw about what we were going through. A lot of couples don't make it through some of these experiences, or there's a lot of blaming happening. And I'm really grateful that that never happened, that he wasn't like, this is your fault for us going to the jungle. And, I felt a lot of that inside myself, like, oh, this is my fault because I made these decisions of you're not supposed to go horseback riding or on bikes or in airplanes or any of those things. And I was like, I'm going to be the one that does it, and it's totally fine. And I was wrong, and I was extremely humbled by that experience. And the chaplain and one of the nurses at two separate times came in, and the chaplain said, I could kick you for what you did. You put your baby's life in danger. And I just thought, you don't know me at all. I don't know you. How dare you speak into my life so negatively? Like, I blaming me immediately for trying to have a home birth and their perspective in the hospital of that whole thing. Oh,
Aren't
on
the chaplains supposed to be there to comfort people, not to shame them?
right. I was like, please don't ever. And I did report it to one of the nurses, and I said, I don't want that chaplain to come back in at all. I don't want to see him again. And then another nurse, the doctor, actually, it was during the time that I was like in between the medication wearing off and still kind of loopy. And I remember her also saying, it's a good thing your baby lived. And like talking, she was the one that did my C-section. And she was like explaining to me that she did it where my stomach would normally hang down so it would look natural. And she was so proud of her incisions and how it was going to heal in the future. And also mad at me that I tried to have a natural home birth without a doctor. And had run out of money by the time I came back. And we almost got stuck in Costa Rica because I went into labor when we were in the mountains, and I had to be taken to the hospital 3 hours away so that they could stop my labor. And again, kicking myself for like, oh gosh, I'm out of the country and I can't get home unless they stop my labor. And part of me thought about like dual citizenship and all this other stuff, like, oh, we'd be able to stay in Costa Rica and kind of go back and forth between America and Costa Rica. So that was kind of a thought process. And that, as well as like my goals for having a healing center and all of that stuff, were at play. And I had made community out there and met tribe all over the world at this point, and had started laying roots out there too. By the time we got home, like, we didn't know where home was anymore from that whole journey. And we didn't know who was left as friends because we had been gone for 2.5 months. So it was kind of like an out of sight, out of mind thing. And a lot of people just disconnected from us and weren't there anymore. And then it slowly dwindled down. And we've got a pretty good, decent little group of friends. And I think I'm comfortable with that, and I feel safe with that. And also, like, any judgments that would come from anybody, I just have had to filter out any kind of negative people in my life that like to play the blame game instead of see growth and humility and change. I had a lot of kickback online too, friends that were like, oh, I'm so glad you survived. How dare you do that? Or how you put your baby in danger. And I got a lot of that negative feedback from Facebook, and mostly Facebook friends and all over the place. And so I had to really like contemplate, like, okay, is any of this something I really need to look at and take to heart? And then what changes do I need to make? And then, because I wanted to still have more children, and I was like, okay, I got to do things differently and be smart about it. And so we got a midwife, who's now like a part of our community, and she's still in our family. And I just saw her for my birthday in June. So it's now July 25th. So, but yeah, for Charlie, that's when the midwife didn't show up on time. We had one midwife on the phone, another on the way. The midwife got there 15 minutes after Charlie was born with the fiasco that I started telling you about earlier with we went out dancing that night with Charlie with his eviction notice, and I was making sure to do a lot of kind of bouncing actions, like trying to enforce him to come down because he was up high. And that night I went into labor at like 3, 4 in the morning. I started cramping, not realizing what was happening in my sleepiness. And then finally I was like, babe, I think I'm in labor. You need to get the pool ready. And I was like, I can feel the top of the baby's head. I'm so sorry. And he's like, what? And he like flies out of bed and quickly trying to fill up the pool. And I was like, the water started spraying everywhere. I was like, we don't have time. We don't have time for the tub. And we had a really skinny, like narrow, tiny apartment bathtub. And I was like, all right, put as much water as you can in there. And I football hunched down and had to turn a weird angle and get him out. And he just came out like a torpedo. He's like, doom, at the bottom of the tub, his little head. Because Dave was like, "What do I do?" And I was like, "Grab the baby," because he's on the phone with the midwife, and she's like, I'm still 15 minutes out," and I'm like, "Oh my God, why did we choose a midwife that's an hour and a half away?" So yeah, that was a whole fun thing. And then one of our tribe sisters, Riss, I don't know if you remember Marissa, Riss, she was taking pictures of the birth, and she was standing on the toilet seat on the edge of the toilet to take pictures with my camera, and the toilet seat goes goes flying, and she's like falling down, and it was just crazy, chaotic, hectic moment of funny things happening all at once. And overall, it was a really easy, fast birth. I sat there in the bathtub waiting for the midwife to arrive and check everything out. And we didn't drain anything yet until she got there, just to make sure that she could check all the blood and check the placenta and all that stuff. And then quickly got cleaned up and processed everything. We got to do art with his placenta. I know it sounds gross and weird at the same time, but my midwife's like, "Oh, I do paintings with the placenta." And I'm like, "I'm okay, well, let's do it." So she puts a bunch of different colors. Oh, I should have brought it down here so I could show you. But it's she paints the placenta with different like palette of colors, and then just kind of does it around the edge of the canvas, and then does the baby's footprints in the middle. So he has that up in his room. So he got a little, oh, I do have his, I know this is gross and weird, but it's literally right here on my altar. So I have his little heart-shaped umbilical cord from afterwards.
Oh,
So I know it's kind of gross, but I save their umbilical cords for in case there's ever any kind of future thing where they need to draw some what is it called? The umbilical cord storage type of stuff, where they can draw from the cells and the blood and stuff left in there and create a vaccine for them or whatever. So I save that just in case I ever need that for any of them. They all have their own little piece just in case. So I also have all their teeth, which is weird, but I'm the tooth fairy.
my mom saved all of our teeth. I didn't save any of my son's teeth, but my mom probably still has containers of teeth.
I do. I have a
I
little.
think she gave me a container of teeth and was like, "Here," and I thought, what the heck am I supposed to do with these? Like, I'm not gonna do anything with my baby teeth. I don't need them anymore. They're not chewing food. I don't need like a memory that I had teeth before my teeth.
Yeah, I know. I have thought about that as a mom. Like, what am I gonna do with all these teeth? Like, what do I need these for? But at one point, I wanted to write a book about the tooth fairy and how she collects their teeth and makes furniture out of it, like ivory furniture. So that's probably still in the works. I do write children's books, and I have many children's books in mind, and I only have the one right now. I did bring it up here with me. So this is my one children's book, The Girl with the Heart Sunglasses. And I have some tongue twister books and some other silly books planned for the kids, and then I have my adult books as well. But I probably I want to write different types of parenting books that have more of a broader scope of like this style of parenting I did, which was attachment parenting. I had read this book by Dr. Sears, who had 7 or 8 children and wrote a book with his wife on how to practice attachment parenting, how to breastfeed, what happens if you're clogged, how to release the duct, and all those things. A full guide. And I ended up giving that to another mom friend that is currently having children. And, that's like my baby Bible. I think it's actually called the Baby Bible, to be honest. And then he has one for toddlers from like 2 to 4 years old range of issues that you deal with, bedwetting or whatever, bottles and pacifiers and all that stuff. And he kind of goes into the different methods that are available and how to do that. But I practiced attachment parenting. So I slept with all of my babies, and they all breastfed to sleep at night. I didn't have to get up in the middle of the night and go prepare a bottle or anything like that. I did have bottles at one point, but it was more for like when we were going to be out and I didn't like if we were in a long car ride or something where I couldn't stop every couple of hours to breastfeed. I would at least pump in the car and then have a bottle available for them. And then Maya was the breathe it out method, and
How did that work?
it was the worst idea I ever had, honestly, because she crowned to here 3 times and then went back in. And the last time she crowned, Linda, my midwife, looked at me and she said, "Okay, baby, I need you to push her out now." Because it wasn't working. It wasn't working. I don't know who this works for. Maybe young moms that have fresh vigor to birth a child, the first 1 or 2 babies, maybe you could practice that. And maybe if you're really good at that, then maybe the 3rd and 4th baby could work out. But the more babies you have, the less your body works, honestly. It works, but it also doesn't work in some ways, especially if you have complications or a C-section, then it now alters the internal terrain of your uterus and the lining of the walls and the way that the placenta forms and where it forms. And I think with Maya, my placenta started covering the cervical opening, so they were having concerns that I might have to have another C-section with her, and I was like, I am not having a C-section again. And at one point, we were living in a house in near the lake, and it had stairs. It was like a 3-story townhouse kind of thing. And we were staying on the top story, the 3rd story. Dave and I's room was up there. And I was coming down the stairs. Dave was at work and he called me. And I was holding on to the handrail, but I kind of like quickly was coming down the stairs, and one of the steps had a shift in it. And I got down to like the 5th step down at the bottom, and the step shifted and I slid down the last 5 steps, and I felt a gush of water, and I was like, oh my God, I think my water just broke. And I answered the phone, David, and I was like, I think I'm going to have to go to the hospital right now. And it was too soon at that point for me to have her naturally. So already I started processing all my traumas from Toby's birth and the C-section and the healing process. And I was like crying. I was like, I'm going to have another C-section. And my midwife came, she tested the fluid. She said, it is amniotic fluid. We're going to have to go to the hospital. And I was like, man, I don't want another C-section. She said, it's okay. I'm going to be here with you. I'll stay with you as much as I can. I'll stay with you and go through this process, because I wanted her to advocate for me, because I was terrified at the hospital after what happened with Toby. It was just overall traumatizing. We went back to the hospital and they said, for some reason, you had 2 sacs and she's totally fine. She's safe inside the 2nd sac. You can go home. Thank God. So, but from that moment forward, I started having really serious prodromal labor for the last month of my pregnancy. So every day felt like I was in labor. Every day I would have artificial like labor pains, everything. My body would go through it all the way. And I was like, man, this time it's for real. This time I have to go to the hospital. And then I'd drive all the way to the midwife. She'd check me. And by the time I got to her, I had closed back up already, because you can close back up. Your cervix will close back down. And there's a thing with the sphincter tightening process is also part of the cervical tightening process. There's methods to like open yourself up by like opening your jaw and letting it drop, and breathing through an open mouth can open up your cervical canal more so that you can birth easier. I went to the midwife, I would close up, and she even showed me the diagram. I'm in baby number 6. The midwives are all showing me, here's a diagram of your cervix, and here's where you need to be before you come back. I said, I know what my cervix feels like when it's dilated. This is my 6th baby. I was like, why is this happening? And it was that 1.5-hour drive again with the same midwife, right? Because they kept the same midwife for the rest of the time. So every time I'd get there, so I ended up staying the night that I was like, I need to induce because I need to get her out. Because again, she would not come out. She wanted to stay in there forever. And she stayed there waiting for her sister to arrive. When Samantha got there, 15 minutes later, Maya was born.
Wow.
It's like she was literally waiting. I'm waiting for my big sister and I'm not coming out until she's here. And I was like all night long on this peanut ball, stretching, trying to balance, trying to get her to come out. And she just, nope, I'm not staying here till my sister gets here. And then she finally came out. My daughter watched that. That was the only one of my older children that watched any of my births. And that was always kind of a dream for me as a mom, that I wanted my kids to be able to see their siblings be born. And I just felt like they would be more attached to them, more close. It has been that way. Samantha and Maya are super close, and Maya is very attached to her sisters in general, but specifically Samantha because she was there when she was born.
Aw.
And yeah, it was nice that I got to finally fulfill that dream of having one of my older children at least. I would have liked for them to all be there, but at that time, Sebastian's like, that's gross. I don't want to be there. But I was like, it's okay. I understand. And Corinne had already come the day before when we tried to induce, and it just wasn't happening. So she went back home, and then her dad was going to bring her back. And then she's like, I'm too tired. So she stayed, and Samantha came. So Corinne almost got to be there too, but that's the only birth that the older siblings were a part of. And then Cami, I was so exhausted after Maya. I thought Maya was going to be my last baby. And I remember we missed David's vasectomy appointment on the last day of our insurance, mind you. And I was like, you did this on purpose. You sabotaged this one appointment, this one chance. And we went to the wrong place. And there was like a separate office for the operations and then one where they came for the evaluation. And so we went to the evaluation point and he's like, oh no, this is the wrong address. And I was like, well, we don't have enough time to make it to the other address because you had to be on time. So we missed that appointment and then ended up quickly getting pregnant with Tammy a couple of years after. I was in perimenopause already at that point. My body had kicked into high gear, and really through after Charlie was born, I started my perimenopause. And then when I got pregnant with Maya, I was surprised because I was like, oh, I didn't know that my body was still wanting to do this. I thought I had lost my opportunity to have more children and I was getting older. And I thought, man, I definitely don't want to be an older mom, but maybe I can do it. Maybe I can do it without any problems, without any complications. And so I pushed through all of the trauma. We did process all of our C-section trauma together, David and I both, during my pregnancy with Maya. And we had to, because having the C-section and then having the miscarriage right before Maya was conceived, that processed some of the like together couple traumas that we were dealing with, and we opened up to each other, went through a lot of healing through that process, and then it made fertile ground for the next pregnancy. So that's something I've learned about miscarriages, is that generally it is said that you become more fertile for the next pregnancy. Like it almost makes that pregnancy even stronger, which would make sense of the second sac, maybe even that preserved her life and incubated her extra secure. My body developed another layer of protection around her specifically. I do think that she's a little different from the other ones. She's like more special in some ways, like more spiritual, like right from the start, just very awake and aware and loves God and loves everyone, and just a very different point of view in her from the other kids, honestly. I also thought I was gonna have to now have what do you call it, a hysterectomy or something to not have any more children. So that was on the way home from my last appointment, like her 2-week appointment as an infant. On the way home from the midwife, I cried all the way home. I was driving, David held my hand, and I was like, is this really my last baby? Am I really done? And I couldn't make peace with it. I just felt like, no, this can't be the end of my journey. But also how blessed I was to have 6 children now. And after Maya was born, I mean, her difficult long labor, I almost bled out. Like I was super anemic. I was dizzy. I really should have gone to the hospital afterwards and just gotten replenished and checked on. I was probably hemorrhaging and I didn't know for sure. And we didn't go that route because they were concerned because Maya came out purplish. Her cord was wrapped around her neck. So they're like,
Oh my goodness.
hospital and make sure that she's okay. So they were very focused on making sure Maya was okay, and then my health overlooked at that point. And my teeth started breaking. I had a couple of teeth break throughout the years after that, and my bones are probably weaker, so I'm having to do a lot of self-care to correct all the incubation time that I've had and putting into making a human inside my body. And it takes from your own minerals if you're not at your optimal health to give that baby everything they need. People that end up with spinal issues because they didn't have enough folic acid during their pregnancy, their child now has spinal issues or brain issues because of malformation, and that comes from malnutrition in the mom who is eating nothing but sugar and not sustaining her body properly. So I've had to take a lot of personal responsibility after children to course correct my health so that I can be around for all these amazing humans that I've made and enjoy them and be in my right mind and be in my right health and be in my longevity. Then we had a little surprise thinking that I was in perimenopause, like full on hot flashes, just all the whole gambit of issues. And then I found out I was pregnant again, and I was like, we made a miracle baby. I thought I was done. So we got excited, and it was during a time of trauma. My ex-husband had passed away in a motorcycle accident, and my three older children were going through a lot of trauma. I went through a lot of trauma from that and deep depression for 5 years and through my pregnancy. So again, she's getting all that negative, sad pregnancy hormone coming from me into my child. So I on this end in life, beyond pregnancy, I have to be aware of how I felt during those pregnancies and course correct any emotional stuff that I might have put into my child that while I was incubating them. Because it is scientifically known that the mother's feelings are felt by the infant inside of you, by the fetus. And so, we inject our babies with our emotions and our feeling, all the things that we're going through, all of our hormones are going to our babies, but also there's a little like catch to this, that there is a whole phenomenon of mothers developing some kind of illness and the child within you developing the base, essentially a vaccine against that from within to remove that out of the mom while they're in there. So it's kind of an interesting little process that can happen there in healing from during pregnancy from your child, taking your cells and spitting it back out the right way and somehow healing you from inside. It's been a long road, a lot of healing, a lot of restoring of my vessel and my hormones, rebalancing myself. I feel like I'm now at a stable point from perimenopause and all of that. My hot flashes have stopped. I'm not done, but I've had to pay a lot of attention to my body's signals and what my body's going through. I've practiced intermittent fasting for the last 9-10 months and been trying to heal my body internally and just detox everything out of my body that has happened to me and internally, all the scar tissue, all the pregnancies. It's like a battlefield inside there and scars of everything that I've gone through, little notes inside my uterus and womb. Cammie's birth, I had an epidural with her. I decided I put my body through too much and I've judged myself too much, and I'm not going to be stupid. I'm not going to be prideful, and I'm just going to do it the easy way this time. I'm going to get the help. I'm going to numb out and not feel pain, because I felt like every pregnancy I was like, I'm a warrior. I'm going to feel this. I'm not going to leave my child alone to experience pain by themselves as they're being squeezed through the birthing canal. I'm going to stay present with them the whole way through and feel every moment so that I don't forget and I don't disconnect through any of it. And with Cammie, once once my epidural kicked in, I looked over at the machine and I was staring at it and I just started crying. And David comes in the room. He said, "Why are you crying?" I said, "I just realized that I've been making everything harder on myself, that I've taken the hard way all the way through in my life in every area. and I need to stop doing that. And, she came out. It was very fast. Her labor was so fast. The substitute doctor, my doctor wasn't present. I'm kind of glad he wasn't, because it was like a doctor chosen for me through my insurance that I didn't really want. He was kind of cocky and I just didn't like his attitude. He also called me a big girl during pregnancy. He said, "Well, you're a big girl and you need to lose some weight." And I was just like, that's really offensive to say to a pregnant lady. Like,
Wow.
I wish I had said, "Well, you're a big guy and you have no room to talk." But I just felt very judged. So I didn't want him there. And he ended up not showing up at my labor. And the female doctor that I didn't want was the one that came. But it was so fast that I didn't really have to interact with her very much. She was barely there to catch. Like, she stuck her glove on. It was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. She caught Cammy. She's like sliding out, ready to go. And I was like, that was the easiest birth I've ever. And I was like, I'm so retarded. Why did I wait till my 7th child to take the easy way out when it was available to me the entire time?
Not with pregnancy, but I feel I could relate to doing things the hard way
Yeah.
just because somehow I've gotten it in my mind that that's the better way, or that I'm going to be a better person, or whatever concept I have concocted in my own head that it is. And yeah, there are often easier ways than how we choose to do things in life, pregnancy included.
Yeah, I've definitely applied that message to my whole life. Like, I felt like God was talking to me in that moment and showing me, like, this was always available to you. It was always your choice. And I was like, okay, but I've learned a lot. I've definitely learned a lot, and I have a lot of compassion for women that have difficult births now. I didn't have that prior. I not that I didn't care or didn't feel for them, but I just didn't have any insight on that painful experience. And I've always had sympathy, but didn't have empathy at that point until I went through it and learned all the different ways that you could experience traumatic childbirth. And so I've had really beautiful experiences with my pregnancies, and with those same experiences that I've had painful experiences, I've also see them as beautiful reminders and experiences that I needed to go through so that I could have compassion for other women who might be alone and don't have a community or family locally that can be there for them when they're going through postpartum depression, or they're bleeding out and they don't have anybody to do their dishes. Or, I've been really blessed to have really solid community members, that you included, that have come and just said, I'm going to come stay with you and help you while you're recovering. I'm going to come stay with you for a weekend and do your dishes and bring you food and water, and just the simple things that I couldn't sometimes do for myself, that I needed to recover and go through that healing process. And honestly, I did have a kind of traumatic experience with somebody that I loved very much, and it was an elder, and she's like, well, you chose to have this many children, so that's your problem, kind of energy. And I was just very hurt by that because it was unexpected, but she was going through menopause herself. So, not on her best behavior. And I just have to kind of let that go. But there's a lot that I've had to process through all of this whole time, having people there for me, having people not there for me. I've had both of those experiences where I've felt very alone after a bad experience. And now I want to be that for friends that are having babies now, that they're younger than me, they're on their 3rd baby, and it looks different every time. Each child is different, from kid to kid. Their dreams, their goals, their personalities, they have their own individual self. And when I was 15 years old, I had decided that I was never going to take my child's power from them, that I was always going to give them the options and let them choose what is best for them, and also guide them and be there for them, but never try to enforce my way or my thoughts, or project out over their life what I thought they should be doing. because I had plenty of people do that to me when I was younger. And I felt very rebellious because of that. And I wanted to prevent that rebellious spirit in my children that said, screw you, mom, I'm going to do it my way. I'm going to go experiment. I'm going to go explore. I always presented all of the options in a healthy way, in a transparent way. And they've all made really great decisions, honestly. There might be a couple of hiccups every now and then of bad decisions or experimental choices, but I'm nothing major. I'm really proud of my kids overall. They're really intelligent, they're very talented, they're super sweet, they're very thoughtful, they're very community minded too. I hear Sebastian talking about wanting a community like what we have. And that's been kind of like shocking for the one that wanted to live with his dad and wanted to at one point to have nothing to do with me, which has since healed recently, actually very recently. That's personal, so I guess I won't go into that, but we've had a lot of healing since their dad passed away, and they had lived with him for 4 years, and that was a big changeover for them to suddenly be living back with me. And now I had to reparent them from the way that I wanted to raise my children from the beginning, and get rid of any negative behaviors that were occurring after being exposed to like technology too soon, for instance, was causing an issue. And that's something that as a parent, I try to stay aware of, is that technology at the wrong age and this without guidelines and limitations opens a lot of doors. And Cami, she's playing video games, and today she came in and she said, can I get online and make friends, like just with a video game that's like that little ragdoll game or whatever? I forget, it was Little Big Planet. And I said, honey, that's like me taking you to Walmart, dropping you off in the middle of the store and saying, I'll see you later, 4-year-old. I hope you do okay. I said, I'm not going to do that, honey. You're not going to get online until you're older. You're not at an appropriate age to be making friends right now. You don't understand that world, and it's too dangerous. Different age groups, you can do more things. They add on more responsibility. They're able to understand a wider variety of things that they didn't understand 2 years ago or at different stages. It's gone very well, honestly. I think overall, I think that my parenting methods worked. My children are amazing adults, and now I'm excited about the second set of kids and seeing how they turn out as adults. And oh man, getting to that point with the first set of kids felt like, oh my gosh, are we going to make it? And keeping this thing alive until they become 18. And now I have less of that. I do, like, when my kids get sick, it's pretty rare, but when they get sick, I listen to their breath. I'm making sure they're breathing normal and that they don't need me every second of the night. I have a hard time sleeping when they're sick because I want to make sure that they're going to survive through the night from a cold or something. I try to keep their immune system up throughout the year so that we don't deal with that. And when we try to feed them foods that help kind of mitigate any kind of sickness that might come in, it still happens. And then once one kid gets sick, everybody else is right behind them. It's like 2 days, back to back, we'll all one at a time get sick. And I'm the last one. If I get sick, I'm the last one to get sick because I've now worn myself out taking care of everybody puking and pooping and towels and laundry and all of the chaos of 7. Well, right now in the household, there's 6 people, me and David and the 4 littles. So 6 people sick back to back is like, when I'm done with that, all of the things I have to catch up in life now that I don't have to focus on making sure everybody stays alive. So I just focus on prevention mostly with that and try to keep them healthy throughout the year so that we don't have extra expenses and medical for health issues.
That's so much.
Yes, definitely. Definitely a lot. But I look forward to the rewards of having grandchildren eventually. And hopefully in the next few years, I'll be a grandma. And that's exciting to me. When I was a teenager, that was what I looked forward to. I actually look forward to being a great grandma someday and being fully healthy and available to my great grandchildren to play with them and interact with them and not just be some kooky old lady that barely can understand what's going on anymore. So we'll see how I do. So that's different.
Well, you're thinking very far ahead. I mean, I know that grandchildren could be a thing, but I've never even given a lot of thought to being a grandmother other than, oh, well, what age would I be turned into a grandmother?
Right.
And that's about it. But beyond that, I don't know what that would look like. And my son is been off and away, and now he's off in boot camp for the army, and who knows what kind of trajectory
Yeah.
that's going to lead him in his life. So I don't even know if I will have the privilege of living near said grandchild should that ever happen.
Yeah. I hope so. I hope that you get to interact with a grandchild. I think you'll be a wonderful grandmother someday. So
Yeah, I'll just be the weird kooky
yeah.
grandmom. I'm already a weird kooky mom. My child lets me know, Mom, you're weird. So
Oh,
I take it as a compliment. Thank you, son.
yeah.
Hopefully I don't embarrass you too much.
It's okay. He'll someday realize, oh no, I got the weird from my mom.
Yeah.
He'll realize it just in the middle of like nothing happening, just like, oh, I am more like my mom than I realized. I started seeing that a lot with Sebastian, honestly. Now that he's older, things that when he was a kid, like he was like, oh no, I eat meat. And I was like, well, we're going pescatarian and vegan, and it's up to you. I'll continue making you meat. And at one point, I was vegan for a few years, and this was when they were like, I don't know, I guess he was like 7 or 8 at that point. He was like, no, I'm going to eat meat. And now he's on a healthy path. Like before, he used to kind of think it was gross to eat vegetables and all that. So he still probably does, actually. He doesn't really eat a lot of vegetables, but he's making healthier choices and wants to have like a holistic company called No Poison. And you scan an item and it tells you if there's something toxic inside of your shampoo or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. I didn't expect that to come from him of all people. Out of all of the kids, he was the least likely to become more naturopathic and more holistic. So it's been kind of interesting to see some of that peek through him too. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. They all got a little bit of it, and it's really cool. Like Corinne mostly. She's the most holistic out of the three of them, honestly.
What a pleasure to get to witness the evolution of each child and how different they are. And then having right now, looking forward to seeing the four young ones eventually broach into adulthood. You still have plenty of years to go from that.
Toby likes to mess with me, and he said, hey mom, I'll be driving in 5 years. I'm like, stop. Stop. Just stop. Don't mess with me. I am equipped for this. I will fight you if you don't talk to me like that. I was like, Sebastian used to do that to me. You're not going to do that to me. He just thinks it's really funny. They like to poke fun at me. Hey, mom, I'm almost a big kid. I'm almost and Cammy's like, I'm a big kid now. Oh, getting her out of our bed was like the biggest transition because we co-slept with each of the kids. The only one that I didn't co-sleep with for as long or nurse for as long was Sebastian. As soon as Samantha was born, he was like, no, I don't want it. She can have it. It's hers now. She can breastfeed. I'll eat real food. And so he was always kind of more independent from the beginning. And then Cammie's kind of like that too. She's a little Libra. She's a little independent girl. She does a lot by herself. And then sometimes she wants to play with other people, but she mostly likes to do activities that she can like control herself and not be told what to do because she's not the little kid. But she is the little kid compared to the other. Right. And it's kind of cool to see. But is she about when we moved in here, probably 3 months in, so about 9 months ago now. We had a whole baby now. 9 months ago, we transitioned her out of our bed, and she was the earliest out of the 4 other children and my 2 older daughters that got out of our bed so soon, because usually I transition them out of the bedroom at 5 and stopped breastfeeding at 4. I stopped breastfeeding her at 1.5 years, and then at around 3 she was out of our bed. And that was like, oh no, my last baby, and I wanted to hold on for dear life. And snuggle her whenever I can. Even still, like sometimes she wants to come cuddle with me, and I'm like, yes, okay, let's do this because you're the last baby, and I'm never going to have this opportunity with my own child. And a grandchild will be totally different, but there's a whole different layer of nurturance that happens when it's directly your own child versus later on as my grandchild. How I will look at that child will be entirely different, and what I pour into that child would be entirely different. There's a whole new layer that I've never touched yet until I get to that point in my life where I'm now a grandma, and like what comes from me at that point is going to entirely shift. And I look forward to whatever that is. I think it'll be fun. I'm excited to become a grandmother. I'm sad to not be a mommy anymore and like have little kids anymore, but I'm like, looking forward to the future of my my womanhood overall.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, we're getting to the close of our time, and this has been such an enlightening conversation just to hear about all of the different processes and the uniqueness of each individual child coming through and what that's like. So, as we leave, I have a question that I ask all of my guests, and that is, do you have any little bits of wisdom that you would like to leave our listeners with? Could be in regards to what we talked about or something completely different, whatever you want.
Hmm. I think it's really important for you to have your own purpose, sense of purpose, and to never let anyone tell you that you can't have everything you ever dreamed of.
Mm.
And no matter how much trauma you've had, you can still have that incredible life that you dreamed of. And this is coming from a person that's been through homelessness and eaten out of trash cans to now living on a 22-acre farm, that I have everything I ever dreamed of. And I'm incredibly blessed after a lot of trauma and a lot of heartache, and thinking I would maybe never make it here, but always hoping I did. And keeping your dreams alive and even when you're protecting them deep down inside you, to never forget that you have those dreams and that you have that kind of compass of purpose within you, and that that's your journey alone, and everybody else just enhances that.
Beautiful. Well, as she mentioned earlier, she does have a couple books that she's written. They're available on Amazon. And she's also a graphic artist and helps other people self-publish their books and has a slew of talents. So if you are interested in getting in contact with her, utilizing her services, buying her books, those links are going to be in the show notes. So please check her out, check out her work. And she's really phenomenal, and you will love working with her if that is your trajectory.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you so much, listeners, for joining us. If you enjoyed this and you want to hear other people's stories about any kind of subject in their life, please subscribe to the show, follow. If you write a review on Apple or Spotify, it really helps the algorithm get this out there. Share with a friend if you think there's somebody that needs to hear the words and stories that we shared today in our show. And as you go about your life, embrace your humanness. Be kind, be you, and remember, everything is part of the journey.